All right, welcome back to day 2 of your article of the week. And on the second day, we always practice finding text evidence. So you should have, I've got the actual directions here. You can just read off the Edpuzzle for the directions, and you should have your copy of the article with a highlighter and a pencil ready to go. Remember, you're going to highlight the evidence with your highlighter, and you're going to write the number of the question next to it, so we know we have a clear match as to which question goes with which piece of evidence. Okay, go ahead and get that set at your desk, and then come back and we'll get started. Okay, so the directions say find each piece of evidence in the article and highlight it, number 1. Number 2, write the number of the question next to each piece of evidence. And just like last time, the first 4 questions are evidence that is explicit evidence. It's what the text says explicitly. You can see it, you can put your finger on it, it's right there in the text. It's easier to find explicit evidence when compared to looking for evidence based on inferences. This is where you have to look for clues or hints, and it's not as clearly given to you as the explicit evidence. So we're going to do half of the explicit, and then the other half are going to be based on inferences. All right, number 1, it says find the sentence that tells how food eating contests began. So if we go back into the article, if we skim back through it, remember the 4 different sections: the introduction, little biography, the history of speed eating, and behind the scenes. So if we're looking for how competitions began, the history of speed eating would make the most sense to look in that section, because how it began and history kind of are synonymous. So if I look at the topic sentence, it says eating contests began as friendly pie eating contests at county fairs and picnics. I would go ahead and highlight that and with your highlighter, and I'm going to, instead of putting a 1 next to it, I'm going to add it as a comment, but you write it right next to it on the paper, and this is going to be number 1. Okay, and I know you can't see that, but it's there. So if there we go. So if you click on this, my number 1 pops up. That's number 1. Okay, let's go back. Did that one? Let's look at number 2. Find the sentence that explains the International Federation of Competitive Food Eating's official stance on intense speed eating training. Now remember, these competitors talk about how they train and just like athletes train. And that was, if I remember correctly, in the last section, behind the scenes, where it says many of the top competitive eaters have made a career. And remember, this is where you skim, use your skimming skills. You're looking for the International Federation. Oh, here it is. Due to the risks with this type of training, the International Federation of Competitive Eating discourages anyone from using this harsh training. So this is their stance. Their stance is their opinion, okay? What they believe. And so they believe because it's dangerous, they discourage the eaters from training this way. So highlight that last sentence, and you're going to number that one number 2. Number 2. See how that's explicit? It's right there in the text. We don't have to make any inferences. Number 3. Find the sentence that tells the new world record for hot dog speed eating. Okay, we're looking for a sentence. And if we go back to our article, I seem to remember that at the beginning of the article, a fierce competition, and it's that little story about how on July 4th, 2018, Joey Chestnut won, and we're looking for his current world record. So we have to kind of skim through. The second paragraph says his determination paid off. He won the mustard belt for the 11th time, $10,000 cash, and he had broken his own world record of 72 hot dogs. Joey Chestnut ate 74 hot dogs, and that is the new record. So there it is, right there towards the end, that little sentence. Joey jaws chestnut. Oops, let me put that back. I'm having a little trouble highlighting right now. That sentence right there. We're going to highlight that. And then we're going to put a number 3 next to it, since that's evidence number 3. All right, almost done with the explicit evidence. Number 4, find the sentences, it says sentences is plural, that tell what the word sanctioned mean. We talked about this when we read the article yesterday. Remember, it means to like rule or referee or officiate. And I wanted you to use that word in your Cornell notes. I'm glad you did, because now it's probably a lot easier to find the evidence. So if we go up to the introduction, and skimming is describing what speed eating is, and then it says the sport is often sanctioned or officiated, that's what that word means, by the International Federation of Competitive Eating. So that sentence defines the word sanctioned. So we're going to add that as number 4. Good job, we're halfway there. We've gotten all of the explicit evidence highlighted and numbered. Now we're going to move on to the evidence based on inferences. These are a little bit harder to find, but you can do it. Number 5, find 2 pieces of evidence in the article that support the idea that it was very difficult for Joey Chestnut to break the world record for hot dog eating. So now we need to find 2 pieces of evidence that show that it was difficult for him to break the world record. And I remember in the fierce competition section, it was all about Joey Chestnut and that the world record he was trying to break. So if we go back into that, it says he had already set a world record, he prepared well, he was confident, he didn't let any of the other serious eaters intimidate him, he barreled through his heaping plates, he switched between fistfuls of hot dogs and soaking wet bread, he ignored his body's natural cries for him to stop. He never stopped, not even when he almost got a hot dog lodged in his throat. Okay, that right there, that sentence where he almost choked, is a really good example of how difficult it was. This is number 5. And then let's go on to the next sentence. It says, now remember, we're looking for, it was very difficult. Almost choking is definitely difficult. And then it says, and he did not stop when he noticed a counting error on the electronic scoreboard. So he kept going. He noticed there was an error, but he didn't stop. He kept going. And that might have been difficult for him because he might have wanted to stop and say something, but he just kept eating. So we're going to go ahead and label that one number 5 too, because we needed 2 pieces of evidence for that. Both of those are great pieces of evidence to show that it was difficult for him to win, but he did end up winning in spite of that. So those are inferences that we can make. That's why it's called based on inferences. It's not explicitly there. Number 6, find 2 pieces of evidence that support the idea that speed eating takes a serious amount of work and commitment. 2 pieces of evidence that show that it takes serious amount of work. I think I remember them talking about training in the last section. So I'm going to skim down here. It says, we've calculated our techniques and approaches to these contests. We've trained our bodies and worked for what we've accomplished. It says competitors of the sport undergo tough training under extreme medical supervision. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight they undergo tough training under extreme medical supervision. Go ahead and highlight that, number 6. That's 1. And then right next to it, the key to success is stomach elasticity. Training involves months of stretching the stomach further and further. I think that would also be a good piece of evidence to show the training involved in competitive eating. Okay. All right. Number 7, find one piece of evidence that highlights an individual who paved the way for today's competitive eating athletes. Paved the way means they kind of started it. They were kind of like the forefathers of competitive eating. So if we go back up, I think history might be a good section. Talks about the contest with children. It says eating contests have been around since the 1900s. 4 immigrants held the contest just to prove who was more patriotic. I believe that could be in one, because I think we have to find 2, right? No, we only have to find 1. So that could be a piece of evidence, the 4 immigrants who wanted to prove who was more patriotic. It's because they wanted to pave the way, I would stick with this one. They go into this Japanese contestant, but that's not really paving the way. Paving the way is more of who actually started it. So we'll go ahead and call that number 7. Number 7. 4 immigrants held the contest to prove who is more patriotic. Yes. And then the last one, it says, find one piece of text evidence that would make you assume that this sport can be quite damaging to the human body over time. And I clearly remember that at the end, because it was kind of disturbing, what was happening to these people, what could happen to them. It says the serious side effects, everything, the last 2 sentences, they include ulcers, stomach perforations, water intoxication, choking, nausea, vomiting, and even death. Actually, that sentence probably would be just enough. We're going to highlight just that second to last sentence, and that will be our 8th piece of evidence for this article. So there you have it. Make sure you have all 8 highlighted and numbered. Make sure your name is on your paper, and you're going to hand your paper to Mrs. Bullard. And if you borrowed a highlighter or pencil, make sure you return that to her as well. I will talk to you later. Bye.